In this episode, we explore the psychology tool internal family systems. We look at how this parts work tool operates, how you can use it in your life, and how intuitive of a system it really is.
Let's talk about what intuition really is.
Let's look at all the places intuition and ego show up in your life.
Let's share honestly.
Let's do the research.
I'm Jamie Hayhurst.
I'm Heather Wood.
This is the Intuitive Girls Guide.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
We're going to talk about something called internal family systems, or IFS. And no, it is not a government organization because it sort of sounds like that.
But see, I also thought it was something else. Like I thought it was talking about like your internal family systems, like with like your mom and your dad and your siblings.
Yes.
It's not that.
It's not.
Yeah.
So, and it's awesome in my opinion.
Agreed.
I really like it.
Yep.
So it is it's created by someone called Richard Swartz, who is a psychologist and family therapist. He's written many books on it. I just ordered one. But it is a psychotherapy that is part of something called parts work. So like when you start to do some work on yourself and you start to try to heal things, you sort of separate yourself into these different parts.
Yes.
And address them. And that's what this is. And it's cool bananas, I think.
Yeah, you love it.
I do love it.
Yep.
I think you like it.
I do. I like it a lot. I don't have as much experience with it as you do, but I loved it.
Okay. By experience, you mean you haven't spent hours going down rabbit holes and researching it because you're not quite as autistic as I am.
I am not.
Okay. So I just would want to say at the beginning here that most of the information I got for this episode on it is from Psychology Today and also the ifsinstitute.com, which is the person who created this is
his website
and his website.
Yeah.
So that's where I got the majority of this stuff from, if you would also like to check those out. But I figured the easiest thing to do would be to read to you the description of it, of what this is. And this is the one from Psychology Today. Okay. So internal family systems, IFS, is an approach to psychotherapy that identifies and addresses multiple subpersonalities or families within each person's mental system. These subpersonalities consist of wounded parts and painful emotions, such as anger and shame, and parts that try to control and protect the person from the pain of the wounded parts.
Correct.
The subpersonalities are often in conflict with each other and with one's core self, a concept that describes the confident, compassionate, whole person that is at the core of every individual. IFS focuses on healing the wounded parts and restoring mental balance and harmony by changing the dynamics that create discord among the sub-personalities of the self.
Yep.
Okay.
That sums it up, sort of.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
It's sort of a very fancy and clinical way of saying, like, when you have an issue that comes up or a vow or something, you're going to feel multiple reactions in your body. So like when something happens or you're triggered or whatever, you don't just have this one, this is how I feel.
Yes.
You have a feeling and then you have a reaction to that feeling and then you have one that goes against it and then and you literally have conflict inside of you, internal conflict about how you feel and what to do.
Yes.
This work identifies them. It sort of makes them people.
It's sort of like inner child work.
Inner child work is part work.
Yes.
So that's under that umbrella.
Yes.
So it's very similar because it's creating a part. And I love that because the way the human brain works, if you assign something a name and you start to understand it and you can like actually converse with it inside yourself. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but you can actually get so much more.
Yeah, I think you're saying a lot better. What I was thinking is that for me, it's the why.
Yeah.
Like if I'm behaving in a certain way or reacting to something, I can see, oh, I'm having a big reaction or I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. That's easy for me. But I can't really change that until I figure out the why.
Yeah.
That's just part of who I am. Like
I'm the same way.
Like I want to know why I behave that way. And that's what this does, is it's like a way to walk yourself through what emotions are controlling you and why.
Yes. And it does it in a way that helps you understand how the human brain works.
Mm.
Because we sort of are given this idea that like your brain is like this, has these singular like thoughts and reactions to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't.
No.
It has conflicting in multiple
It
different
creates like systems. It's almost like filing systems.
Yes,
Or like
in different pathways in the way you
like
react.
tunnels or something.
And
However you want to visualize it.
every time some shit happens to you, it sort of goes through these processes.
Yeah.
And it's much more complicated
Mhm.
than I think how it was ever taught to me personally,
Mhm.
anyways, of how your brain works.
Yep.
Okay. And if you think about it, when this is something I do often, and I think you've probably had it done to you or done it to someone else to help them gain clarity, where you say, like, if this was happening to someone else, what advice would you give them?
Yep.
If this hard thing that was happening to you was happening to someone else, would you feel the same way you do about it happening to you? And it's much easier to have a perspective on it because
Mhm.
it's not
So
like
personal.
internal and like the singular
Right.
thing. It's like, oh, I
Right.
can
You
have
can
multiple.
take yourself out of it.
Yes.
Right.
Now, also, what I love about this is that it shows you your own patterns in a
Yes.
really beautiful way.
That makes sense.
And I really, you don't have to just be someone like me who loves a pattern. If you can
No.
actually understand your own patterns,
Right.
you can become so much more powerful in just the way you live your life. I know
Yeah.
that sounds cheesy, but it's really, really true.
It really is true.
Okay. I would also just like to note that two things. First, internal family systems. I'm going to keep calling it IFS because it's easier to say.
Yeah.
IFS is not appropriate for everybody.
Agreed.
Okay. So there are people who have, like, parts work would not be healthy for, like, maybe someone who struggles with schizophrenia or
multiple personality.
paranoia or,
There's
yes.
a new term for that. It's not called multiple
Oh,
personality.
yeah, there's a different
anymore.
term. I don't remember. But yes, those may not be appropriate. So
Correct.
before you go and start using these concepts, make sure that you know about yourself if it's safe, or maybe check in with a
go to-
mental health professional.
Yes. No. Yes.
Yes, no, yes.
Yes. Go see it. Find a therapist. Do some work with it. And then if you want to start doing your own exploration with this,
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
Not everyone can do it the way you're going to do it, Heather.
Nor should anybody do it, okay? Like, you need to know yourself.
Yes.
And you need to know, you need to be intuitive enough to go, like, does this sound like something that is safe for me? And if it is, put your toe in the water and see. But like, if you have a question or it doesn't feel great, but you still are interested, you should ask a professional to guide you in it.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to say is that I am not, nor are you, a licensed professional. Mental health, you could be a mental health counselor, or you could just be a certified practitioner. You don't have to be a therapist to be certified in IFS. But neither of us are certified in it. Just because we know a lot about it and have both done it does not mean that we are that. So we are not actually conducting an IFS session in this episode because that would be crazy.
No, and I did IFS with my therapist.
Exactly.
Who's certified in it.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So the thing is that this is just meant to like give you some examples and some things to think about with it. But this is not the full picture.
No.
There's so much to it. Like, you get the book.
Yeah.
Go on the ifs-institute.com.
Yes.
There's a bunch of different books. I ordered the one that's called Introduction to Family Systems. The titles aren't super creative.
So are the books written for therapists and specialists, or are they written for like the lay person to read and use themselves?
The Introduction to Family Systems is written for anybody, the lay person. It's actually, a lot of the things, like the reviews on it before I ordered it, people were saying like, this is a really great support to the work I do with my therapist.
Perfect.
Okay. So if you want to understand what that's like, that's great. But Richard Schwartz has written many books on it. Some are for practitioners, some are for like, so just go look and see which one makes sense.
Yeah, and just do it safely. If you feel like you're getting over your head,
take a step back.
Call your therapist.
Call your therapist. Have them on speed dial. Maybe let them know you're thinking of trying it.
Yeah.
See what they say. Okay. So I just think that's important because it's really important to both you and I that people go seek people who have become certified in things, whether it's mental health, the medical field, astrology,
Astrologer,
tarot
exactly.
card. I don't
Right.
care what it
Birth
is. Like,
charts.
go
Yep.
pay the people who are experts in it to do it for you, if that's something that you can do.
Yes.
Okay.
If that's not accessible to everybody, we get that. But like,
Yes.
if it is, and it's something you're really interested in,
Support the people who have spent their time educating themselves about it.
exactly.
Okay. IFS work is about something called the self. And in IFS, the self is always capitalized, just to give you an idea. I really love the idea of there being a self and then all these other parts, because that feels very accurate to me about what it feels like to exist as a person.
Yeah.
Where there's these things like you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling an emotion, or you're feeling like you've got to do this process to keep yourself safe. But there's also a part of you that's kind of observing that, going like, the hell are you doing?
It's almost a little bit, if you're looking for like a visualization for it, it's almost like the Inside Out movies.
Yeah.
Like where there's I forget her name, the girl who's the main character.
Yeah.
And then she has these emotions inside of her that are sort of sometimes running the show.
Yes.
For good or for bad, right?
Yeah.
But like it's not necessarily emotions.
Right.
But that's sort of, if you're looking for a way to like think of it and organize it in your head, it would be something like that.
100% agree. I also think there's some relief to know that, like, especially like your like anxious-y voices aren't necessarily you.
Yes. Yes.
Like there's a more core part of yourself that's hearing it.
Yes.
Is my point.
But if you're not doing this type of work, like specifically IFS or any kind of like what we call the work, it's hard to determine what's what. Like it's very easy to think that those anxious-y voices or those angry voices or whatever they are, it's easy to think like, oh, that's just me.
I can't even tell you how many people that I have told those voices, whether it's anxiety or just some kind of fear or like a intrusive thought, that those aren't you.
Right.
And them being baffled by that idea. So I don't take it lightly, and I think it's important to say.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
easy to lose that.
Yeah, it's way more complicated than just, oh, I have one thought about it and that's how it was. Correct. And that's real.
Right. No, thoughts come and go.
Yeah.
Just like feelings come and go.
Yeah.
It's what you do with them or how they affect you that matters.
And they're important and they're valid, but they're not necessarily true.
Correct.
So that's the big deal.
Yep.
Okay. So IFS works with the self and then its relationships to all your parts. So it gives the parts roles, which is helpful in creating the distance you need to address and access different like issues or vows that you have.
Yep.
Okay. It creates like I love a story, but it creates a cast of characters for you to study and to understand, why am I reacting like this or feeling like this or going through this thing. It gives you that knowledge, like you were saying, like why.
Right.
It gives you that. Okay.
You can't stop something. You can't stop doing something.
Yeah.
Until you know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
You can for a little while. Like you can smush it
down. You can alter.
And ignore it and suppress it.
Yes.
But it's going to come back up until you figure out why you're doing something. And then you can change the behaviors or the reactions.
Yeah. It's sort of like if you just were treating symptoms in your body all the time and never going like, why is this all happening? You're just constantly treating symptoms and you're like appeasing them a little bit, but then it's going to come back.
And you're not addressing the root cause.
Exactly. Right. Exactly right. Okay. So self is the essence of who you are. It's labeled the undamaged core self. I had like a weird reaction to that at first because it made me a little squidgy to think of like parts being damaged, but I think the sentiment of it is true. Like it's not unaffected, but it sort of operates above all of that. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I had the same but different reaction. I was like, I don't know what part of me isn't damaged. Like, there's nothing left there.
I sort of had to like, aren't we all like what's undamaged? Like is that like fully healed, like this fakey
like
thing, like
perfect part?
Yeah, right. That was how I felt about it.
Right.
But I think the what they mean is true.
Agreed.
I also kind of think of when us woohoo people are referring to like a higher self, that's kind of also what we're meaning in a way.
Gotcha.
Okay. So The goals of IFS, I'm going to read you what they are. Free the parts from their extreme roles. Okay, I like that. You're freeing them from the extremity of they're all going to keep doing roles.
Right.
But not so extremely. And you can actually come in and like have some say in how they operate.
Yep.
Okay. Restore trust in the self. The amount of times I've done this kind of work and found like a mistrust of the self is crazy.
Alarming.
Yeah. If you too are someone who likes to control everything,
right,
you're going to find that a lot. Okay.
Yep.
And then to coordinate and harmonize the self and the parts so they can work together as a team with the self in charge. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. There are 3 common roles. Okay. And again, there's so much more in depth. I'm just trying to give people an overview so they can decide if they want to try this or not.
Right.
But the 3 common roles that you'll find in the parts are the managers. Managers are protective parts that function to control people's surroundings and manage emotions and tasks to navigate daily life.
Okay.
All right. There are exiles. These are my favorite parts. I'm obsessed with the exiles. Okay. You'll find out why in a second. Exiles are the parts that hold hurt, fear, and shame from early experiences and then carry the difficult emotions and memories associated with those experiences. Managers aim to keep exiles contained and hidden from conscious awareness to avoid distress and pain. Okay. And then the third role is firefighters. Not like your husband who actually puts out fires.
Yeah, he does.
I'm not sold on the name.
Same.
Okay. All right. Anyways, firefighters.
I thought I was just being biased about it because actually, no, like.
No, I didn't.
I agree.
Okay. Firefighters are activated when exiles produce overwhelming, painful, or threatening emotions. Firefighters aim to inhibit those difficult emotions by any means necessary, such as substance use or binge eating. This is like all of your coping mechanisms that help you avoid shit.
Yeah.
Those are the firefighters.
Right.
I think of firefighters as people who come and like put out a fire and like the danger gets calmed. This is sort of like you just avoid the danger.
Numbing.
Yeah. Like you're like ducking a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So a therapist or an IFS practitioner would help you identify the parts and then release the burdens they carry. So you would be talking about an issue and you would say you've had a feeling and it was like this. And so they would be like, this sounds like your manager, or like this is the exile, or this is the firefighter, and then help release the burden that they carry.
Yep.
Okay. So the process, it goes like this. We're going to talk about it in a minute. I'm going to not be so technical, but like I want to take you through the steps. Okay. Yeah. So one thing in the IFS stuff is they love to have a lot of stuff that starts with the same letter.
Alliteration? I love alliteration.
Okay, they're obsessed.
Okay.
So everything is like the 5 C's of this or the 4. I don't care for this because it's a little cheesy and forced.
Gotcha. You can feel when it's forced.
The process is all F's.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the first one is find. Identify the parts of your mind and body that need attention. Second one is focus. Pay attention to the relevant part. Third one is flesh. Flesh it out by describing it in your experience of it. Then feel. Explore how you feel towards this part. Befriend. It's a stretch. Gotcha. Express curiosity about this part and accept its presence. Fear. Ask what this part fears and what it would fear if you changed its role. Okay. That's sort of what a therapist is going to, or a practitioner is going to do down the line as you're doing this work. Okay.
Got it.
I have a lot of additional points that I'd like to talk about. I'd like to give you an example of something that happened when I did one to myself yesterday as I was like refreshing that Jamie knows about and then tried to respond to, but her Marco Polo got deleted and I don't know what she said. So I guess she'll just respond to it now because I think it will help illustrate for you how cool this work is. Yeah. But I want to take a quick break first. Okay. So we'll be right back.
We'll be right back after this short break. You know what goes great with podcast listening?
A great cup of coffee from a great coffee shop.
Yep. Beans roasted in-house, amazing baristas, You know where I'm talking about.
Restoration Coffee. Can we go?
Yes, I need an Americano and maybe a panini too.
Ooh, I need blueberry maple latte and probably a resto bowl.
Ooh, yeah. Check them out and visit restoration-coffee.com.
Let's talk about what we're obsessed with this week.
All right, Heather. So we touched upon this in last week's episode.
Yep.
Which was about like victim shaming, victim blaming.
Yep.
But in that obsessed, we ended up talking a little bit about what I am now currently obsessed about, which is the world ending. I mean, that's what it feels like. We're actually talking
I laugh
about, like,
because I feel like last week was the first obsessed in a while where you didn't say
Debbie Downer Dungeon.
Yeah, and then I tried to like, all right, let's talk about it and like make it like something you can address. And so I was really like, I wonder if she's going to hit it this time. But I think you just did.
No, yeah. I mean, I think like, again, like at the time of our recording, there's about to be a second hurricane to hit the like southern parts of the United States.
Yeah.
Really bad hurricane. Like we obviously, it's not hitting till tomorrow night, but it's like supposedly like a category 4 or
By
5.
the time this airs, it will have hit. So I don't want it to sound like
like insensitive.
Right.
No, I'm not feeling insensitive about it at all. I'm feeling very sensitive about it. And like, that's the thing is that like, we were talking about how this isn't technically affecting us because we are in the Northeast. This is happening down in Florida.
Right.
But like as intuitive people and empathetic people, like we're worried.
Yeah, and not just because we're empathic and intuitive, but because like you literally, if you're just paying attention, you can literally feel it in your body. Both the weather and the earth doing things, but then also the collective worry and strife about all of it. You are feeling.
Yeah, and
you're affected by it.
And it's not just like the weirdos of the world like us that are feeling it. Like I was at like my normal muggle job today, and like someone I work with like turned and looked at me and was like, "What are we gonna do about these hurricanes?"
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't know. But like people are feeling it, even if you don't realize you're feeling it, or even if you're one of those people who's like mad at everyone, who's like, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you evacuate? Why didn't you like? Even again, victim blaming. Yeah, again,
making the mother.
It's because you can't manage it because it feels too big to you. So rather than addressing the real problems like climate change, and the breakdown of capitalism, late stage capitalism,
and
all
the
of these problems,
politicizing of it, so like we won't actually prioritize the people. No, but like DeSantis won't take Harris's phone, like
won't take her phone call. Right, exactly.
Right,
that is politicizing. Or like blaming people for controlling the weather to affect the election. Which
there's no
Green said,
there's no climate change, but like the other side is affecting the weather.
Right, exactly.
It's interesting.
So all this bullshit is hovering around, right? But like that's all of this happens because the problem actually feels too big to address. So it's easier to like focus on the bullshit than it is to actually focus on how to fix it. But we're all feeling it, is my point.
Yeah, I think those additional factors that you're talking about are just like amping up the thing that is like intuitive that we're feeling. And it's just like causing, so like there's a real thing called like being a geosentient.
Yes.
And that's just, you can look it up. I didn't invent it. No. I think I might be the president of the club.
You might be.
But it just means that you are much more physically affected by the weather. And listen, everybody is physically affected. Like I was just recently reading a study on like, I have a brother who's a type 1 diabetic, like diabetic blood sugars, how they're affected by like things like humidity and pressure in the air.
Really?
Yeah. And like, this is to anyone who's the diabetic listening is going, duh.
Right.
But like I'm just saying, like, this is where the science meets the woohoo, like we always talk about. Like, it's actually real.
Or if you know, like some old man who's like, there's a storm coming, I can feel it in my knees.
My knees are aching.
Like that's.
I think I feel that way in my body. So
That's
I'm the old man.
geosentience,
Yes.
though. But
But yes, like I will have this very certain feeling in my head. It's like a pressure when there is a high pressure storm coming. When there's a low pressure in the air, my body feels like actually almost too light. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not always like, it's not like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can feel a storm a brewing. Like, it's actually my body is physically responding to what the weather is doing.
Correct.
You know, like I had a headache for like 3 days when we had those like random earthquakes that kept happening in our part of the world that don't usually, like, very minor.
Right.
I couldn't shake this like weird type of headache that I don't usually get because I don't usually feel that. But like, that's a real thing.
Yep.
You know,
that is a real thing.
I think it's why sometimes it's hard for me to adjust when I travel because all of a sudden I'm in a different climate. I'm not sure the human body's designed for that.
No, it's not actually. Right.
But like, the point of me saying all this is like, so you might be super affected by it or you might not be super aware that you're affected. Right. Everyone is on a different spectrum again. I mean, if we do have merch, that's going to have to be on it. But you're being affected, like you can feel that. It is affecting your physical body. It's affecting your mental health. It's affecting your emotions. Like all of that stuff is affected when something like this happens.
Right.
I feel like, not to try to put a positive spin on your devastating statement.
Well.
But I guess I'll do that.
Oh, try it.
I feel... Try. You're like, how low can I go that she can lift it up? It's like a lovely challenge. The thing that I like about that is how interconnected we really are as people and 100%. How we create, like, because you were born on that patch of grass or something, I don't need to care or whatever.
You're voting this way so you can fall off the earth.
So my point is, like, we are actually all connected. We are all affected by things. We are all the same exact thing.
Right.
All connected to each other. And all these... It's just bullshit that we're saying we're not. And like we're creating all this otherness is actually harming us.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
I don't know if I made it more positive, but I think I put a spin.
I don't know. It was a better spin, I think.
I don't know if it was better.
It was a good shot.
It was just my good try. So I think just take care of yourself about it.
Yeah.
You know, and
when you feel yourself shutting off, when you feel yourself othering people about it or victim blaming, like, well, they should have left, or oh, they should have done this. Like, check yourself. Why are you feeling so defensive about it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's because you feel out of control.
100%. And if you're feeling some feelings and you need to take action, if I could just make a quick PSA for a charity that I care a lot about.
Yes.
If you could consider donating to the Red Cross, the American Red Cross. I work for that. I volunteer with them. Like, they do so much amazing stuff. They're flying people out right now. Like, to help and aid in that, and they don't politicize it.
No.
So consider either volunteering with them or donating to them. There's a million different ways that you can help.
Yep.
Like, maybe go through that channel. And to me, it's like, it's that old Mr. Rogers thing. So it's like, look for the helpers.
The helpers. Yeah.
So look to all those amazing people.
Love it.
Okay. All right, Jay, let's talk further about this whole process of IFS, internal family systems.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make some points. I want to talk about it, but I want to start with, usually I'm very angry about polarization.
Yes.
Okay. If you want to tick me off, it's to talk about how we do that as humans.
Yeah.
But in this, like, polarization within the self, and if that's not a term you like, just within yourself, when you feel two opposing reactions to something, that is a beautiful place to start doing, like, part work.
Yes.
Whether it's this or inner child work or whatever. Like, that is showing you, like, oh, the polarization is a conflict is below it, right? Like, within yourself, where this would be a great opportunity to address it and to, like, look at those two different parts and hear those two different voices.
Yep.
Okay. One of my favorite questions that is often asked when people do IFS by the practitioner is, where in your body do you feel this?
Yep.
I love that. It doesn't have to be an IFS. I just like that anyways.
Yeah.
But I do think that's an important way to, like, start to identify that it's separate from you.
Yep.
Right? Like, because we do that with, like, physical things, but we often don't do it with emotion. And it's really evident. You can also watch someone's body language. Like, I mean, obviously I'm going to say that, but people, when you start to talk about an emotion, people will start to protect the part of their body where they feel it, even if they don't know
it.
that's where they feel it.
Yes.
So, like, for example, I was talking to somebody the other day about something great, like something that they were really excited about doing. Like, it was a business thing. They were being really successful. And as they were talking to me about it, they started putting their hand across their chest and rubbing. And that's where you store grief, right? So I didn't ask because that was not appropriate, and I went, but I did make a little mental note that there's some grief reaction aside, like happening with the happy reaction.
Yes.
They're grieving the loss of something, or it's reminding them of something, or
Right.
there's so many things it could be.
Or they're afraid to lose this happiness.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
happening at the same time as them being happy and telling me something.
Correct.
And they're like,
Right.
I mean, I could go, where do you feel that in your body? And they would go, I feel like a feeling in my chest. Like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I already
right,
knew that. But
right.
do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
so, but you can watch that even when people are just speaking in public, they tend
Mhm.
to hold their hands in front of a part of themselves. And that will tell you, like, if you know anything about the energy centers or the chakras, it will kind of give you an evidence of like what they're afraid of when they're up there.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Yeah.
it will.
A lot of women, especially, put their hands in front of their
Crotch.
vajayjays.
Yeah.
And that is, it's just like a first chakra belonging thing that people are doing, but people, of course,
Make
they
it
sexualize
sexualized.
everything.
Ugh.
Yeah. So if you're doing
Yeah.
that, it's not necessarily sexualizing. You're just
No.
like
Just like
really wanting to be accepted by everybody there.
safety. Yeah.
Guess where my hands are? Rejection people have their hands lower usually on their body.
Mhm.
And then they'll creep to my mouth because I'm like, are they understanding what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Anyways, I digress. Once you can identify where it is in your body, you can start to go like, okay, how do you feel towards that?
Mhm.
Like, now this is how they start to take you from being centralized in it to
Right.
like creating space with it.
Yep.
How do you feel towards that feeling in that part?
Yep.
That is amazing when you start doing those things.
There's
Okay.
also something I think incredibly insightful about just having someone leading you through just by asking questions.
Oh, yes.
Like all this you could get to, theoretically, you could get to on your own.
Yeah.
But like if you were just thinking about why am I so upset about this, or what, like what's happening right now, your brain's going to fill in a lot of like stories. And there's something about like, and you do it in your sessions, IFS does it, like just having to answer a question point blank.
Yeah.
Where is it in your body? How do you feel about it? Why? And like being pushed a little bit.
Yeah.
It really cuts to the chase.
It really, it being outside of your own mind
Right.
forces the answers to have to be intuitive.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because otherwise you can spin in your fear voice. You can like your ego.
Oh,
takes-
she said this. I felt like that wasn't fair. Like you can
Yes.
add all these
Yes.
thing fillers in.
Yes. But if I'm saying like, how does that make you feel? You have no choice, even if you never say it aloud to me,
Right.
to hear the answer to that
Yes.
and to feel the answer to that.
Yes.
And that is incredibly powerful.
It is.
Okay. So also in this, you speak to the part
Mm-hmm.
and you find out what it knows and you ask it questions. You oftentimes are validating it
Mm-hmm.
and apologizing to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thanking it.
thanking it. It might sound like you might be hearing this and going like, that sounds actually bananas.
Oh yeah, you might.
Maybe
It's actually pretty cool though.
it's-
I don't know. I love it.
it is mind-blowing
Mhm.
when you see like the intricateness of what these parts are holding on to and how they feel, and like you've already created the character, you just don't know it. I'm calling the part a character, but do you know what I'm saying?
Right, and it's all a part of you. So if
Yeah.
it feels too weird, like you're making it like an inner child or something, and that's too weird for you, it's just a part of yourself that is trying to protect you or trying to keep you safe. There's no harm in talking to yourself about your own experiences.
Yeah. And you don't have to do it out loud in public. Like a
No,
crazy
but why
person.
not?
I
Like
mean,
why
you
not
could.
talk why not do it with a therapist or someone rather than
Yeah.
I think it feels safer to like do it in your head and like
Yeah.
and not but like actually having to say it out loud to someone else I think is incredibly validating.
Yeah, someone who can hold that space for you and like kind of guide you on it,
Yeah.
or like be like, wait a minute, go back.
Yeah.
That is really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Some powerful example questions that get asked, and I talked about this before with the trust. This is something that I find when I do this work, that when I'm talking to the parts and I'm asking them, why do you feel like you have to control everything or micromanage this kind of thing or work so hard? The answer is so often like, wait, I thought I had to. There's someone else, like
Right.
there's a self here, or I learned not to trust that because of this thing that happened. Like
Right.
there is an answer there that is so fucking phenomenally powerful that
Right.
it'll knock your socks off. You
Or
know what I'm
imagine
saying?
if you're someone who's really struggling with one of the coping mechanisms of like one of the firefighters. Like
Yeah.
if you're struggling with an eating disorder
Yeah.
or self-harm
Yeah.
or negative self-talk or whatever it is, like imagine realizing that that's not all of you.
Yeah.
That there's a different part of you that's just being like protected by thinks it's being protected by those behaviors.
Yeah.
And like how sort of freeing, but also like what relief it would be to be like, I'm not just my eating disorder, or I'm not just my addiction.
Or learning that those things are present in you because they're trying to save you or
not
help
kill
you.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's amazing. It really is. So along those lines, when you're learning that trust, one of the things that I think is amazing is often a question that you would ask that part of yourself is, how do I earn your trust? You're not just going like, oh, like this is the work we talk about. You're not just going like, oh, I don't trust the self.
Right.
Okay, identified, move on.
Right. Right. Yes.
You're going like, how do I earn your trust so that
Yep.
you can trust that you don't have to do those things, or that that's not all on you, or there's a powerful part of us that's leading.
Yes. Right.
And there's an answer.
There definitely is an answer.
I mean, that is incredible to me.
Yep.
What do you need from me? Part. This part that's spinning or struggling or thinks it needs to control everything. Like, hey, what do you need? And hearing that answer.
Yep. Incredible.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. This part really thrills me because it's so woohoo that I can't even deal, but it's in psychology.
Like, right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Is you ask the part its age.
Yes. Yep.
And then you ask it, do you know how old I am?
Oh.
So I think that's really powerful. So on Abby and Glennon's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, and Amanda, they walk through these sessions.
Yes.
I was really struck by Abby's session when like they asked her the part that they were addressing how old it was like a child, and then it asked like, how old do you think we are, and it said the same age. And so like she did this thing where she told them like, we're actually this, like, and the part was so relieved that like a grown-up was in charge. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, that is amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah. There's a term that is referred to in IFS that I haven't seen referred to other places, but I don't think it's exclusive to this. And I relate to it a lot. I think you do too. And it's called a parentified inner child.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you think of just like, oh, like due to circumstances, I was like a little bit parentified child or whatever. But you don't really think about it like, oh, one of the managers I have, one of the things steering me is this like parentified inner child that thinks it knows what
trying
to do.
Be an adult, right? Exactly.
Right, and it's probably so sad and scared that if you could like start to talk to it and release its role and shift things around, like how powerful that would be.
Yes.
Yeah. And my inner child is definitely parentified.
Same.
One thing that the creator of this, Dr. Richard Schwartz, I'm not going to call him the father of it because that just irritates me. And honestly, like I've listened to a lot of things him speak. I've listened to him interviewed. He's not like a super charismatic speaker or anything, but like the vibes are all good. I don't get the ick from him. I get the ick very easily. So does Jamie, especially if it's the father of something. And especially if there's like a program like this. And other than me not liking all the alliteration, I do like it.
No, yeah.
The vibes are good.
Yep.
But in speaking to it, he talks about something that the other people in the industry don't like.
What?
And he said there are no bad parts.
Oh. Huh. But people don't like that?
No. So like he will speak to people who have like committed like a capital crime, like murdered somebody. And so he addresses the part that did the murdering. And he's not saying this person should be innocent. He's saying like the part's not bad. It did it because it thought this or it felt this. And in the psychology world, that seems to not be accepted very well.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that, but like, I don't think that there are many people that are actually just born bad.
Well, it goes back to that thing we always say, like, get rid of the idea that there's all good, all bad. There's a good guy, there's a bad guy. Everything is both.
Even like clinical personality disorders.
Yeah.
Which are like psychopathy.
Yeah.
Narcissism.
Right.
Like NPD.
Right.
Those are caused by trauma and like problems in the brain.
Yeah.
Like it's something that happened like while you were a child and probably a problem in the brain development.
Yeah.
But like you're not just like a bad seed.
Yeah, and you don't have a part of yourself that's bad. Like maybe you have an eating disorder or a substance abuse like issue, right? Those parts aren't bad. Those aren't like flaws in your character. Those are just ways that you are coping with living in a ridiculous world. Do you know what I mean? Like I like the taking out the idea that it's good or bad.
Well, it's
just get rid of it.
It's the same as saying that like when I say that feelings are morally neutral and like, thoughts are morally neutral. Well, maybe not thoughts, but like it depends on what you do with them. Yes. Thoughts can come and go. Yes. It depends on what you do with it.
Yeah. The fact that you had a thought that you would like to punch that person in the face does not make you a better or worse person. Right. If you then go punch the person in your face, then maybe it doesn't mean you're a good or bad person. It just means you're like maybe there's a bad decision.
Then there's morality involved, right? Like you're acting
right.
On
you gotta keep people safe. Right.
Right.
Exactly. But the thought itself is fine.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
I think stuff like IFS or any kind of parts work in the psychology field is like so intuitive. Like it's really, we don't label it that because it was still like a weird stigma for some 100%. Reason. But like you're going, here's the feelings and stories that I've created around the feelings. Like that is intuition.
Right.
And like,
yes.
Like oftentimes like I see, like I watched a bunch of videos too of people doing, like people will record sessions and share them. And one of the questions that was asked in almost every single one was a form of when I ask you these questions, don't think, just say what comes to you.
Just respond intuitively.
We're going to need to use your intuition.
Right.
So just try to answer and see what comes.
Right. But they won't use that word.
This is like the most woohoo shit ever. I'm sorry. This is controversial. Get ready. Clutch the pearls.
Okay.
To me, saying that to someone and doing that is more woohoo than having crystals in your underpants or whatever.
Agreed.
That's what the real woohoo thing is.
That's the real shit.
I love crystals. I don't have them in my underpants. I have put it in my bra before, but like they're in my bag. There's one right behind you. They're around my house everywhere. I love them. But that's not actually the real woohoo shit.
No. Nope.
Don't before all the crystal people get mad at me. I love crystals and will continue to purchase them. All right, I gotta tell a little story. This is a story I told you, and then I never got to hear your reaction because I think you hit Marco Polo twice, and then it just recorded you swearing about a red light.
It's just yesterday was a day.
You had
that was just the icing on the cake when you were like, "So your Marco Polo didn't go through." I was like, "Of course it didn't."
I was like so sad to have to send that. I'm like, this is not gonna go over.
I was like,
well,
I'm not repeating it.
You did. You're like, I'm not saying it again.
I'll see you tomorrow. I'll tell you then.
Okay. So I was doing this work in preparation for the episode. I wanted to do a session, and I did this by listening to a recording of being asked questions. So you can find those. You should do it with a real therapist, though. But like, you can try this. Way if you want to. If it feels
don't get
safe.
in too deep.
Yeah. Also, this is work that I'm not an IFS practitioner, but I am I do this kind of work.
Correct.
So I'm not like a
Yes.
stranger to it. So
Right.
that's my asterisk to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having this realization about like exiles and wounds, and realizing that the managers and the firefighters were like, they weren't actually afraid of the parts in the way that I thought they were. So I wanted to share it
Okay.
because I think it might help people.
Tell us.
Okay. I'm going to make it as succinct as I can because you don't need to hear like my whole journey. I mean, you did on the Marco Polo that you couldn't respond to, but I won't torture our listeners with that. When you're doing this work and you find an exile and you like communicate with it, you sort of move through it, and like it's sort of like a windy road. Like all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, this is coming up, and so you'll kind of go now and speak to the manager,
Right.
and then the firefighter, and then you'll come back. Like it's sort of because it's intuitive. It's like a windy
Correct.
process.
Right.
Okay, so I started with an exile, and then was speaking to the manager, and then was speaking to the firefighter, and was like, what I thought was that those parts were afraid of this exile of mine. I'll label her for you in a minute. They were afraid that she was going to hurt other people. That was the impression I was truly under. And like from my childhood, the idea that like being intuitive and being weird or being loud or too much or all of those things, I feel like I'm always trying to protect other people from that part of myself.
Right.
You know, I have a lot of like things in place that I double check before I like say something to someone, or like I'm very,
you have like a self-editing system.
Yes, I'm very cautious
Right.
about that. I don't let a lot of people just get like the actual line of intuition that's like running through me. Like I don't share that with very many people.
Right.
They wouldn't have access to that. Some people don't even know about it, because to me, what I thought was that was kind of dangerous. So I thought like the manager who's always like assessing everyone around me, and the manager who's always like ruminating on everything I say all the time. Like I thought they were doing that because they were afraid of other people's reactions to me. To that exile.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What I realized in the session I was doing, that was not the actual case. They were actually afraid of the exile for myself. They were afraid that
you were going to be hurt.
I was going to hurt myself.
Right.
Yes. So the exile I have named the Swamp Witch.
Yes.
And she is this like intuitive, super emotional human.
Yeah.
Or part. Okay.
Right.
And so she's easily wounded. She's quick to anger, but she loves everybody and she cares so much about everyone. And she's just this like ball of emotion and intuition and energy all the time. And it's like this big pulsing part of who I am.
Yep.
Okay. And so I thought that the managers and firefighters were protecting me from being rejected by other people based on their reactions to her, or possibly hurting somebody. Okay. With that.
Yeah.
What I realized was that they were all afraid of her.
Correct.
Not other people's.
Right.
Other people's reactions were a factor.
Right.
But what they were trying to do was actually protect the self from that
all
part.
That feeling. Right.
Yes.
All the
and
emotions.
So the thing that's so crazy to me about that is that shifts how you have to heal it.
Exactly.
Like if you didn't see that, like, yes, of course I want people to like me. And yes, a very emotional swamp witch could wreak havoc.
Yeah.
I do understand. I'm not going to go ever just rawly be emotional in front of everybody.
Right.
That's never going to be what I do.
Probably not.
No, it's very unlikely. I have to be like very medicated for something like that to happen.
Right.
But what I was understanding is that like I'm trying to heal all these parts and release them from a job that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, you were trying to like change how you were feeling about being perceived.
Yes.
And like people, like interacting with people and being perceived by people. And that wasn't the issue. And
I think that a lot of people who are big squishy people like us, like emotional and empathic and intuitive and like feel all the things, I think they'll relate to this because it feels like a weak, unsafe part of yourself.
Yes.
It feels like a part of yourself that can easily spin out of control if you're not constantly keeping it reeled in.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is that that part of yourself is actually incredibly wise and intelligent and smart and has more wisdom than all the other parts of you.
Yep.
So like you got to be careful not to cage it.
Yes.
Because you're afraid that it's going to destroy you, not necessarily that other people aren't just going to like it.
Right.
You think like, well, if I have these big feelings, won't that take me out? Because you're taught to think that's weakness.
Yes.
When in actuality, that's strength.
That is the strength.
Okay. So I thought you'd be entertained by this, that I went through and I asked my exile its age.
Yep.
And it said it was 10,000 years old. Now, never in any of the IFS stuff that I've done or watched or been, has anyone's part ever said that they were older than like their whole self.
That's classic you, though.
I'm old, but I'm not quite that old.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And then the managers and the firefighters were all like children's ages. There were 6, there were 8, there were 12, there were 14, there were 16. And so I was like, oh my God,
That's
I
why
have
they're
this
scared.
10,000-year-old swamp witch that lives inside of me who is being caged and has to listen to and be like held back by children.
Teenagers.
This is no wonder she's so pissed.
Furious.
Yeah.
Right.
So
exactly.
then the
and
healing.
no wonder why they're scared of her.
Yeah, they're children, and there's like a literal witch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's like boiling over and mad and happy and laughing and cackling and
Yes.
all these things are happening.
So what's actually happening is that I'm afraid of my own power,
Mm-hmm.
not afraid of my own weakness.
Correct.
So holy
They're-
shit, that's the kind of stuff you can find with IFS. I would actually
Pretty
really like to
incredible.
know if anyone else's parts, if you've done it, have ever been older than you.
I want to do more of it. I'm
Okay.
gonna find out.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's really interesting. You've done it with a therapist.
Therapist.
Like how did you feel that being in that sort of environment? How did you feel like that went?
I loved it.
Mm.
I mean, my therapist brought it up and said that that's what she did her like dissertation on or whatever.
Thesis or something,
thesis.
yeah.
Yeah, like that was her whole thing. And
Mhm.
so she walked me through it during one session and I thought it was like incredibly insightful. Like that's the word I keep coming back to when I think about it, is insightful. Like it
That's a good
really
word.
shows you not just like what you're doing, but like why. I know I already said that, but like I think that's really the powerful part is like
Mm.
seeing where you feel it in your body, why you're doing certain things, and like what that means to you.
Yeah,
And then you can affect it and you can heal it.
I agree. I think one of the things that I love about it too, because we know that I don't like a singular label.
Mm.
I think it feels very soothing to me for there to be some kind of system in place somewhere that identifies that you are multiple things at the same time.
Yes.
Because when you
Right.
do this work and you're like looking at the parts, you're like, oh, I have a part of me that's real uptight about this.
Yes.
But like, for example, when I was, even last night, the swamp witch
Yeah.
was not. She didn't give a shit.
Right.
She feels all the feelings and she wants everyone to love her.
Right.
But she also is more interested in just feeling than she is
Yes.
making everybody like her.
Yep.
So it's sort of like
Yeah.
you go like, oh, I am both uptight and wild. And I am
Exactly.
both afraid and proud. And I am both like I'm like micromanaging myself and I'm being a perfectionist to keep
Mhm.
myself safe.
Yep.
But I'm also like wildly uninterested in being perfect or
Right.
perceived that way.
Yep.
Both at the same time. And to someone like me who a label feels like itchy
Safe.
scratchy,
Right. Yeah.
it's like, oh,
That's why.
because if you just said, well, a part of me is, yes.
Yes.
That's the feeling I've been trying to identify and explain my whole life is that,
yes.
yes, I do feel this way, but only a part of me feels that way because this other part feels like this and this other
Exactly.
part feels like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I did my session, I think that's actually when we talked about in the inner child episode,
Yep.
and I mentioned that feeling of loneliness.
Yeah.
That's where I discovered it, was in IFS, and
Yeah.
I never realized that I felt that way before. It was in that session where it was like, where do you feel it in your body? How does that part of you feel? How old are they? What's the feeling? And it was loneliness. And I
Yeah.
never, if I was sitting and journaling or if I was just sitting and thinking about it, I never would have gotten there. It wouldn't have been
No.
safe enough.
Yes.
to discover it. But because I was having to answer the questions, I was being guided by somebody I trusted
Yep.
to take me there. It was like that. And I instantly like got choked up. I instantly was like, I am incredibly lonely.
It's so powerful when you say something like to answer a question and a part of you goes, what?
Exactly.
What? I
Right.
didn't expect myself to say that. And that's such a good example of how there's a part, because only a
Right.
part of you is lonely.
Correct. And
You
then,
know what I mean?
And then if you can identify like how old that part of you is and like when that part of you developed, that changes how you see like your whole life.
Yeah.
Like when you know that loneliness is steering for part of the time the ship,
Yeah. It's managing,
it
right?
changes
Yeah.
like how you perceive things happening to you and why you've reacted in certain ways and why
Right.
why I've been defensive and protective about things.
Because in this example, the loneliness would be the exile. Right. The part of you
Yes.
that was saying it was lonely is in
Yes.
exile. And so these managers and firefighters are coming in to avoid you feeling lonely.
Yep.
And so your behaviors are being steered in
Mhm.
such a way, and people are perceiving your personality in such a way that isn't necessarily authentic, but
Right.
is to prevent you from feeling lonely.
Right.
And you don't even know you're doing it.
Right. And there's only so far you can dig. Like I know I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to be perceived as being like what I call like a pain in the ass. Like I know all those things about myself, but it wasn't until I realized that those were the firefighters and
Yeah.
the managers coming in to heal the exile or protect the exile.
Yes.
Right. So like that people pleasing
Mm-hmm.
was created to protect me from being lonely.
Yeah.
Like I have like that swamp witchy
Yes.
energy of being
Yes.
emotional, being chaotic
Yes.
and wild and loud and
Yes.
feeling. But like that's not safe when you don't want to scare people off. And you don't want to be lonely. Right? So then you shift it into becoming a people pleaser and being like, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
look how accommodating and amenable I am.
you are
Don't
way
you
too
want to hang out with
accommodating
me?
of a
Don't
person.
you want to be my friend
Yeah.
and not leave me alone?
I mean, I think you're the only person I've ever said out loud to, please stop being so accommodating.
Yep.
That's you.
Tracks.
But when you're saying like, I don't want to be a pain in the ass,
Mm-hmm.
my script would be, I don't want to need help.
Right.
And so those two things,
Mm-hmm.
right, are exiles, but they're not like in our 40s selves saying that.
No.
They're like a
right.
child version of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
saying that, and
Mhm.
the rest of our system going like, well, we got to protect you from that,
Right.
like lovingly. And the managers are like out there trying to make the world a place that you step into where you don't feel like that, and the firefighters are like, oh my god, she's about to feel like she's going to be in need of help or
Right.
a pain in the ass, like quick, like
Right.
do this instead, and it's harmful to you, but
Exactly.
it's to save you from that, because that part of you's so afraid. Like
Yep.
when you think of it that way, to me it's so much more sweet and beautiful and
Absolutely.
like easier to heal
Yep.
than like, oh, this is the label of what I have wrong with me and I
Right.
must suffer under it for eternity.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm okay with labels. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
we can get stuck there,
Right.
you know, and not
Right.
heal.
And that's also why, like, when you talk about the ages, is that, like, as 40-year-old women in our
Mhm.
40s, that's why when, I'll speak for myself, when I get upset about something, sometimes I instantly feel like a discord,
Yeah.
because I'm like, why am I upset about this? Like, I don't give a shit about this. Like,
Yeah.
why am I giving a shit about something I don't give a shit about?
Right.
And then you realize when you're doing this work, oh, because it's that like little 6-year-old part of me
Mm-hmm.
that feels really scared about that. And so
Yeah.
rather than like fighting it and resisting and arguing, you have to go in there and heal it. And that's like IFS can help you with that.
Yes. And it doesn't just have to be like a big tragic thing that happened to you.
No.
Like to me, like it was never direct messaging to me from anyone in my life that I shouldn't ever have any help with anything, or that being an emotional person is a
Problematic,
weakness
right.
or problematic.
Mm.
But society told me that.
Mm-hmm. Sure did.
As soon as it saw like, oh, that gender's female,
Yep.
let's quickly tell her that she can't be any of these things.
Yep.
And like, oh, like emotional,
Right.
or bleh.
Right.
And so you internalize that.
Yeah, of course.
And so I really believed that those parts of me were dangerous and weak, and so I was doing all the stuff to protect them from other people. But what I realized was that actually they're really fucking powerful.
Exactly.
The reason that messaging is there is because it's so powerful. And
Exactly.
they're very desire based because they're emotions. Like one of the things I really like about myself and have always liked about myself is that I'm very intuitive.
Yes.
It wasn't always safe for me to let other people know that, but I always liked that about myself.
Yep.
And the same part of myself that is intuitive is highly emotional because they go together.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I feel all the things. I too get mad. Why am I so upset about this thing that seems like a small slight from a person?
Right.
Because I am a big squishy feeling person who loves everybody. I love people I don't even like. It's frustrating and it's difficult, but it's in that you can actually change things and like make things better in the world. It's
right.
that caring so much that makes us that way. It's what makes you host Debbie Downer's Dungeon, because like you care.
I care.
If we didn't care, it wouldn't matter. And people who care are people who actually make a difference.
Yeah.
So it's so backwards, and the point is like it could be outside influences that just gave you that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be some big life trauma.
No,
I mean that'll do it too, but like there's other little societal things that you're always absorbing.
There's a lot of deconstructing to do.
Forever, always.
And this is a great way to do it, in my opinion.
I agree.
So I would love for our listeners to try it or share stories if they've done it. Check out the website. I don't get anything from this. I mean, if we were smarter businesswomen, we would be like being paid to promote things.
No, thank you.
But
I don't want that.
I was just
I like money, but like I don't want to be paid for promoting things.
Neither of us are people who could, because we're too big and squishy about it, could never do that.
No.
So if we like something, we tell you about it, and if we don't like something, we tell you about it.
Right.
And I gotta tell you, if we were in that direction of like we'll just do stuff so people pay us, we would not have said anything about Grab a Voy or Doreen Virtue, because literally the everyday
still
about it. It's some Teal Swan too. Like
people love Teal Swan still.
I keep every once in a while she pops up on my TikTok, my For You page, and I'm like, what are you doing here?
I know.
How are you still around? You're always in a gown and sitting on some throne. And
there's always some there's always like a new wave of people.
Yeah.
That that discover that type of person, like a Doreen Virtue or a Teal Swan. Like, people learn and move away from them, and then there's another wave of people who are like, oh, Teal Swan, love it.
Yeah. Well, Our Inner Swamp Witches won't allow us to take money for saying what we think about stuff. So
no, but we will take money if you want to advertise with us.
If you want to just be a sponsor for our rantings and ravings, we would gladly take your money. Yeah,
I'll do that.
My inner swamp witch would like some coffee. I don't know about yours.
100%.
And maybe some food. So I think we need to feed them.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Hey everyone, Heather and I have an ask for you. If you love this episode, or if you love the IGG, can you do us a favor? We need you to go onto whatever platform you listen on and download, subscribe, like, love, whatever it's asking you to do. Can you go do those things for us on the platforms that you listen on? It would mean so much to us.
Thanks for listening to our episode. For a way to get in touch with us, please visit our website, intuitivegirlsguide.com. We love hearing your feedback on our episodes.